Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Keyblade Master and welcome to my channel. Now, as I explained last time in my last video, I am done with the original series and we're now on to the 4Kids era, which I only own one game of. Let me explain. I have played through all the TMNT games from the 4Kids era, but I rented those games, so I don't have them, which is kind of unfortunate. I do own TMNT 3 for the PlayStation 2, so this is the only game from the 4Kids era that I actually own. And playing through this game, I kind of forgot just how much I missed this show. While the Nickelodeon show is awesome, the 4Kids era show was a lot darker, which is kind of ironic considering 4Kids' reputation in the anime industry. But yeah, the 4Kids Ninja Turtles was probably the darkest we've seen the Ninja Turtles. In one episode, we see Leonardo decapitate the Shredder. Yeah, it's in silhouette, and later we find out Shredder isn't human, so that decapitation didn't faze him at all. But for several minutes, we're left thinking that the leader of the Ninja Turtles just cut off someone's head. So that's the type of show the 4Kids version was. Anyways, Konami got the license to make games from the 4Kids version of the show. Now, these games that Konami made were not as good as a lot of the games they made back during the original series, and people were quick to point that out. However, I don't think people give Konami enough credit when it comes to these games. Times have changed since Turtles in Time was made. The PlayStation 2 was out, they were on discs, people were expecting longer adventures, but if you try to put in an arcade brawler which lasts about 40 minutes and try to expand that to a 6 or 7 hour game, it gets kind of tedious, and Konami found that out the hard way when they made the original game based off the 4Kids license, as it played a lot like Turtles in Time, only in 3D. So in Turtles 2 and 3, they decided to mix things up a little bit, turn it into a little bit more of an action RPG. And it's kind of a mixed bag. But as you play through these games, you will notice that there was some effort put into this. Unlike a few of the games that were published by Activision, but we'll get into those later. When it came to the original cartoon series, Konami had full rights to write whatever story they wanted and put it into their video game. The original series was kind of just loose with its facts and its story. It was more satirical oftentimes if you really go back and watch some of those episodes. So the fact that in one of the Konami classic games, Shredder lifted the entire island of Manhattan off the ground, you bought it, because Shredder was doing strange stuff like that back in those days. However, when you get to the 4Kids series, things changed. 4Kids was dark, it was down to earth. Characters had development, you had story arcs, so Konami just couldn't come in and say, Shredder did X, Y, and Z and now the Turtles have to stop him because of these arcs. So what Konami did was they went straight to the series and then took 3 of the big arcs from a season and split them into 3 episodes, each with around 15 to 20 missions. Your first episode will be dealing with the Triceraton invasion. Your second episode will be dealing with a man named Bishop who wants the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles DNA so he could create super weapons just in case aliens invade Earth again. And he's willing to drain every ounce of their blood even if it kills them. Alright, so that was a lame jab at the Michael Bay movie, but even those of us who enjoyed that movie realize that line is absolutely idiotic. Finally, for your very last episode arc, you're going to be fighting the Foot Clan and Shredder and trying to keep Shredder from going out into outer space and destroying the Utroms. And that's how Season 3 ended. I do believe this was Season 3 of that show ended. And all in all, it's pretty good, and Konami does a good job rewriting the story and doing it justice. They use tons of clips from the 4Kids cartoon show, and for the most part, the animation from those clips hold up well, and the video quality of those clips are also pretty good. However, they needed to add in a few new story elements to fit into the game, and here they use CGI to do it, and it's not very good looking. Still not the ugliest I've seen the Ninja Turtles in a video game, but it's pretty darn close. This wouldn't be too bad, however, if there wasn't a lot of scenes where the animation will switch from the for kids version to the new CGI cutscenes, and wow, does it take you out of it when it does it. Also not helping is some of the characters' voices change. Like this one, for example, and I swear to God I did not cut it this way. It actually happens like this.
No way!
Welcome to the Triceraton Rebellion.
The Triceraton Rebellion?
Yes. Zanruman must...
Okay, let's look at what was wrong with that scene. First, you had an animation shift between two types of animation that are completely different looking. Plus, you had a change in voice actors for one of the characters, and it just happens. It's distracting. Fortunately, that's the only scene where it happens where it's absolutely laughable, but there are a few other places where the animation style just changes. I don't know what exactly Konami was thinking when they decided on doing these types of scenes with both the traditional animation and the CGI switching back and forth. If they had to do it due to licensing reasons, or if they just didn't have the time and budget. But I can tell you this. When they happen, they're distracting, and I don't like it. And finally, one last thing I have to nitpick about those ugly CGI segments is that they do have one really gorgeous-looking CGI segment, and that is the opening of the game. It starts out beautifully. We have Splinter telling us we must destroy Shredder in order to become true ninjas, and then the 4Kids theme opens up with what looks like to be new CGI animation from Konami, and this one actually looks good. I don't know what happened to the rest in the story, but this one actually looked like they put some effort into it. Since I've spent the last minute or two bloviating on how the in-game cutscenes look like, because they are important to the game's story, let's talk about the in-game graphics now. And let me tell you, they're actually quite good. Konami uses cel shading, and they match the look of the 4Kids series almost as perfectly as you can on the PS2. In fact, I would say if this game was given a slight HD upgrade, you would not be able to tell this game was 10 years old. The graphics look beautiful, the characters are well designed, and they look like they fit in the show perfectly. My only complaint might be with the camera. It does sometimes get lost, and it's a little bit high up from the action, unlike some of the classic brawlers, and that does take you out of it a little bit. But then this was meant to be a multiplayer game with 4 other people, and I have not yet played this game on multiplayer mode, so I do not know how well this game handles 2 or more human beings playing the game, if it becomes a mess when you have more than one person running around at the time. But I can tell you on one player, other than an occasional blind spot hit or camera being lost around the corner, which is typical for this type of game, the camera operates just fine. Now onto the sound, and it sounds pretty much what a modern day brawler should sound like. You get all the sound effects, the grunts, the voice work, all the voice actors from the 4Kids cartoons that were mainstays appear here inside the game, and they all sound great. A few of the side actors had to be changed. I already showed you that little video clip screw up that I've already criticized. But for the most part, the voice work is solid, the sound effects are solid, the music is okay. It's not Turtles in Time memorable, but it's not bad. And yes, in case you're wondering, the game does not make the mistake that the original Konami made 4Kids Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game made, and that was doing repetitive sound clips. The original 4Kids Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game probably goes right up there with Super Mario Advance when it comes to using annoying sound clips way too often. For example, every time you attacked with Leonardo, he would yell "slice and dice," to the point where I did want to just mute the game. This does not happen here. Yes, they do use sound clips. Yes, they do get repetitive like a lot of PlayStation 2 games of that era when it comes to those type of things. But they don't overuse it to the point where you want to commit suicide. Alright, let's talk about the gameplay aspects of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Mutant Nightmare. After the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles based off the 4Kids property kinda got complaints about it not being modern enough, Konami kinda went back and turned the next 2 Turtles games into more of a over-the-top view RPG for a lack of a better term, and it's all mission-based. So basically what you have to do is clear an objective and you'll beat the stage, and each stage is about 3 to 6 minutes long. Yeah, the stages are really quick and short to play. They're meant to be that way. It's meant to be if you got a few minutes or a few hours, you can just clear out a bunch of them. And I kind of like that aspect, other than the save screens take forever. Also, some stages are a bit longer because they either have a puzzle aspect or they're kind of in a dungeon environment, and they can take forever. And when you die in these stages, you always start right back at the beginning of the dungeons, and that's a pain. And I should say, when you die, if the turtle you're controlling dies, it's game over. If one of the other 3 characters die, then you're fine. It's kind of annoying pain, and I don't like that. I kind of wish that if your turtle got KO'd, you get to switch to a computer turtle, but then the game might be just a little bit too easy, as it's not too hard as is. Now for the RPG element I mentioned, you won't be leveling up through experience like a traditional Japanese RPG. Rather, you will be collecting crystals that enemies drop, and then you'll be able to purchase new skills that will become available as you clear missions, as well as new combos that can be equipped to your turtle. Also, some missions will have scrolls hidden away at the end of them, and they will severely boost your power if you can get a hold of one of those and clear the mission. So you do have some customization of your turtles. It is not as much as I would have personally liked, but it does make a difference, and they are kind of handy to have these skills purchases and the combo purchases. And replaying levels for these extra crystals is kind of nice. Every once in a while the game will change and mix things up by throwing in a shooter stage or a racing stage. These stages come across often enough, like every 4 or 5 missions, to where they don't seem completely alien, but at the same time they're neither really tough or really annoying to where they seem intrusive. They're distractions from the main game, and for the most part they're fun. They're not stuck into that obligatory mini game that just came out of nowhere and is hard as heck that keeps you from advancing. I hate those. These are not them though, and it's actually kind of fun, and I like the idea that Konami was willing to change it up every now and then to keep the game interesting. Now, as far as the computer AI goes, I have to admit it's pretty good. The other turtles will engage in combat. The enemies will also engage in a way that's both challenging and somewhat fun, which is different from a few of the other games I'm going to be reviewing soon that look a lot like this game but play like trash, mainly because the AI in those games are badly broken. Here, the turtles will be attacking even if they're computer controlled, and the enemies will attack, and it's a pretty fun game even on single player. Now, if I were to mention any cons in this game, would be number 1, although the AI is pretty good, it is not perfect. Some of the stronger boss battles where you'll be needing to save those health power-ups that might be scattered across the field, your AI companions will sometimes take these big power-ups, even if they're only slightly damaged, leaving you screwed when the damage really starts to pile up later in the fight. Also, the stages are sort of short, and the game is only about 6 hours to beat, and after that there's no real reason you want to go and come back and pick it up, unless you really just want to collect all the scrolls and DVD cases. Yes, they were nice enough to do a nightmare mode, which are these just really hard stages that unlock after you've beaten the main game, based off another story arc. However, there is no story elements that were native to that arc. You just pick a turtle and play through these scenarios, which is unfortunate because the arc was really good. For those of you who didn't watch the show, basically one of the turtle's enemies gets a hold of a magic time staff that can control time and zaps each turtle into a reality which he would consider his own personal hell. For example, Donatello manages to go to a New York City in a short time from the future, where he finds out that all his brothers have been killed by the Shredder, who had returned from space with an army and managed to conquer Earth. This arc was actually set up before the Stop Shredder from going into space arc. And all these Turtles nightmares were interesting in the actual series. However, there are no story elements to them outside of this opening cutscene, which is kind of a shame. Still, it's not a bad extra mode to go into. It is just a shame that it doesn't have the story elements in this Nightmare arc that it did in the other 3 episodes. In the series, these were some great episodes, and they're not portrayed well here. It's the only time that I could say the game doesn't do the 4Kids series justice. However, the fact that it is an optional mode shouldn't be too surprising, and overall these stages are somewhat fun and an extra challenge. Also included in this game as a nice bonus is the Turtles in Time arcade game, which is the original arcade game. This is not the Super Nintendo port, and as I've said, the sound is not the same as in the original game, so that's why I gave Ubisoft a little less grief when it came to their music compositions, because Konami's doesn't sound better. To make matters worse for the PlayStation 2 version here, is that Konami set this up to be like it was emulating a 4-player arcade game, each with its own stick. So player 1 is Leo, player 2 is Mikey, player 3 is Don, and player 4 is Raph. Unfortunately, the original PlayStation 2 only had 2 controller ports by default. There were accessories, of course, to expand this. And if you're playing on a PlayStation 3 like I am, well, you're going to need to have 4 controllers if you're going to be playing all 4 Turtles. And in order to select like Raph, I would need to have 4 controllers, and they would all need to be turned on. This is a pain in the butt. I only have 2 controllers, so I was able to get the game to let me play as Mikey. And I will be honest, I found the game a little bit more fun when I had another turtle other than Leonardo to play as, because mainly you can see a little bit more animation of like Michelangelo laughing while he's surfing or just being laid back, and that does add a little bit more to his character that the Super Nintendo version didn't have. But still, the Super Nintendo had better controls and it had better stages. So, I would have still rather had the port of the Super Nintendo over this muddled port of the arcade game. I give TMNT 3 for the PS2 a 4 out of 5. It has some decent graphics for its day. In fact, I would say if they managed to do an HD port of it, it would still be good. It would look just as good as a current PS3 or Xbox 360 game. It has some good ideas on how to modernize the classic Turtle formula of a brawler, and it's still kind of fun. It does have its odd missions that can be frustrating, but those are few and far between. However, while it is longer than the arcade game, and while it has more depth than those old arcade games, I still find myself coming back to those old arcade games really often. I don't see myself going back to Turtles 3 Mutant Nightmare for another 4 or 5 years, and only if I, for some reason, just want to experience the 4Kids series as an arcade game again. So I don't see myself coming back to this very often. Still, it's only $15 on eBay, and it's worth checking out. Anyways, that is all for today. I am a little bit behind on my Ninja Turtles month. I'm probably going to be extending it into March. But my next game is probably the best in the series. It's tied between this and the Super Nintendo port of Turtles in Time. And that would be Ubisoft's TMNT game for the GBA. So be sure to click on that subscribe button, and I'll see you then.